British colonialism and colonisation, in general, a very highly charged, emotive and controversial subject, regardless of how you bring it up. Our post-colonial deconstruction theory has sought to look back at the history of imperialism, its effects and subsequent impact, which many will argue is still being felt today. However, ongoing research has stirred intense debate in academic circles about whether British colonialism was really all that bad. Author and former Oxford University professor Nigel Biggar, there's his book, has written this book. It's entitled Colonialism, A Moral Reckoning, tackling and getting a lot of criticism for asking that very question, which we'll get into in a moment. The Prof with us this morning, Nigel Biggar, joining us from over in Oxford in England. Morning to you, Nigel. I appreciate the time. We'll talk about the criticism. I'm sure you won't shy away from that, but just help me understand. I've got the book with me. I haven't had a chance to read all of it in detail as yet, so I'm going to ask you to explain to me why write the book? Where did this come from? Why now?
Well, Garrison, the phenomenon of empire is universal. There have been empires around from the ancient period to the modern and from North America to China. So one thing that has struck me about recent discussions of empire and colonialism in my own country, in Britain and elsewhere, is that people are only interested in European empires. No one cares about, for example, the Comanche Empire in the southwest of what's now the United States in the 1700s, or the medieval Muslim empires, or even the Zulu Empire in South Africa in the 1820s. The obsession is with European white empires, and the question arises, why? My view is that empire and colonialism now is a proxy for the West. So what's at stake here is the record of the West and faith in the West, because if it's true that the record of the West in terms of European colonialism and American colonialism is simply a litany of racism and exploitation and oppression, who would keep faith in the West? So that's the narrative I wanted to challenge, because I think it's simply historically untrue.
Some people are saying that by writing this, Nigel, that you're going to come across as an apologist and a denialist of what happened. You're trying to gloss over the facts, and you're cherry picking the facts in the book. If I take a look at some of the criticism, what's your reaction?
Well, if by denialist they mean that I avert my eyes from some of the awful things that happened within the British Empire, it's simply not true, and any reader can see that if they pick up the book. I mean, I'm quite frank about the horrors of slavery and the slave trade in the 17th and 18th centuries. I'm quite frank about the fact that the British war on Imperial China in 1839 to 42 was completely unjustified. I'm frank about the wrongness of the massacre at Amritsar in 1919, and I could go on. So this is not a whitewashing of the British Empire. Bad things happened, very bad things happened.
But do you justify the violence? That's one of the criticisms. Sorry, Nigel. Do you come across, it seems, from some critics that you're justifying the violence because that was the way of the times?
Well, that's not true in every case. In all the cases I've just mentioned, as I've just said, I think the violence was completely unjustified. Now, there are some cases where I justify the violence that other people think was unjustified, but it depends on the case, Gareth. So the invasion of Benin, for example, in 1897, I think was overall justified.
Did you write the book to get under people's skin? I'm curious.
No, I'm a really shy, retiring, introverted academic, Gareth. I don't seek the limelight. I don't seek controversy, but controversy came to me because I simply said what I thought to be true. Just in terms of being an apologist, I mean, I don't apologize for the empire as a whole, although I do think that colonial rule was sometimes justified. And if that weren't the case, then millions of Chinese wouldn't have fled the Chinese mainland in the 1950s to go into the British colony of Hong Kong, because at least Hong Kong offered the rule of law, whereas mainland China didn't.
You acknowledge, though, the damage that in many cases, especially in Africa, that colonialism left behind, apart from slavery and education, which one could argue education was arguably better or not better, depending which viewpoint you want. But there was a lot of damage left here in Africa.
Yes, there was, and I think particularly the seizure of land by settlers. So, as I say, I don't avert my eyes from the bad things that were done, and I lament them. But I think one has to be clear here that you won't find any long-standing state that hasn't presided over bad things. I mean, we all, I hope, rejoice at the fall of apartheid in South Africa in the mid-1990s. That doesn't mean we're not severely critical about what's happened since then in South Africa. So political life is full of both good and bad.
Some are suggesting as well, I want to get your thoughts on this, that it's almost coming across that you're trying to suggest, Nigel, that former colonies should be grateful for having been colonized. Is that what you're saying?
That would be too simple. As I just said, we can be grateful for the fall of apartheid and yet lament what's happened since the fall of apartheid in South Africa. There are certainly things that I think one should admire in the British Empire. I admire the 50-year campaign to abolish slavery from 1780 to 1830. I admire the fact that the British then abolished slavery across the world, from Brazil, across Africa to India and Malaysia. I admire the fact that the British Empire was the only military opposition to Nazi Germany from May 1940 to June 1941, with the sole exception of Greece. That isn't to say, as I've just said, that I lament the many bad things that the empire presided over. So I think both gratitude and criticism are warranted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was about to say there's some criticism levelled at the book and yourself as well, even from those at Oxford, from the academic circles as well. So is this in support or against the deconstruction of colonial states in our world? Do you believe that colonialism still has a place in the modern world?
No, I don't. I mean, European colonialism was a thing of its time. It will never return. Insofar as colonialism, insofar as imperial power was put to humanitarian effect, and it was in the case of the British Empire and other empires too, I do believe that all states should seek to promote humanitarian causes around the world, usually not at the force of a gun, although sometimes that might be justified. But no, I'm not a colonial apologist in the sense that I'm calling for a return of colonialism.
So just as I say goodbye to you, Nigel, and I appreciate the time, it's obviously going to get a lot of people very angry, some people supporting it, some people not supporting at all, what you're talking about in the book as well. Was this just to stir the conversation? Are you trying to get somebody to agree with you or disagree with you or check their own moral compass? What's the outcome of a book like this? You want someone to get to the last page and do what with this information?
I want them to be informed about the whole truth about the past, not the highly partisan caricature that has been put about currently. So I want the whole truth to get out there. And judging by its success, the book has been in the bestseller lists here for some weeks, and it's selling extremely well. So I'm really pleased that there appears to be a wide appetite out there in this country and elsewhere to hear the whole truth about the colonial past.
Well, I appreciate your time in coming on. Certainly going to get a lot of people talking. I don't think it's going to be ever a clear-cut view on the book, and I think that's the whole point. When you have a title that's entitled Colonialism, A Moral Reckoning, it's always going to make for fascinating, if not even slightly angry debate. But Nigel Biggar, thank you very much for coming on and joining us all the way over from Oxford in England. It really is going to get a lot of people very hot under the collar. Maybe that was the point. Maybe this is exactly why the book should be read. A lot of people in the book in support of Nigel Biggar and the way he's written the book, an encyclopedic historical breadth, penetrating in analytical depth, a moral inquest into our colonial past is what Dr. Ruth Dudley Edwards, author of The Seven, had to say about that. But if you also go online, there's a lot of people who are very against the way the book is being framed. But that's exactly why we wanted to get Nigel Biggar on and talk about it. In the end, it's up to you to pick up the book and read it and form your own opinion on colonialism.